What's going on, everyone? How you all doing today? I'm Jay Caragay, back again here at the Spro channel with our weekly Tuesday morning coffee Q&A live stream. And so this is the live stream for you to ask questions about coffee. Anything you want to know, we're here to answer. So Spro's been around for what now? Since 2006, and I've been in coffee for about 20 years now. So we've got a lot to cover. And anything you'd like to know, just drop them in the comments below. Would love to hear from you. What are we drinking today? So today I've actually been roasting all morning. So I just finished up the roasts, got some coffees ready to go out for both online orders and some of our wholesale clients. So I've already been drinking. So today I'm drinking this coffee, and this is actually a coffee from Mexico. Some of my friends who work at Cafe Etrusca down in Mexico City sent this over to me. It's really great coffee. And this is their Finca Cero Brujo Ocozocuautla in Chiapas. So it's their Barista Champ brand and lighter roasted coffee. They've really come a long way over the years with their roasting, the roasting approach. When I first started trying different Mexican coffees, they were really like darker roasts. Now they're definitely on the lighter side. But this one's nice. It's a really nice coffee. And part of the reason we're drinking this is because they just had their Expo Cafe this past weekend in Mexico City, and it's a really great event they have. It's just kind of like the American trade show that has a trade show, seminars, classes, and of course, different barista competitions. So congratulations to them. I think that went really well. Our show in the United States actually is supposed to kick off on September 30th down in New Orleans. But I don't know if that's happening still. There's a lot of petitioning. The Specialty Coffee Association United States chapter has petitioned the Specialty Coffee Association worldwide to cancel this event because of, the hurricane as well as, the pandemic. So evidently in Louisiana, the pandemic's a little bit heavier than in other parts of the country. So even myself, I'm kind of wondering if I should be going or not. All right, anyway, so that's how this coffee is. So like I said, it's kind of a medium body. It's light. It's very bright. It's got nice juicy tones to it. So yeah, nice. Now I've been drinking it for the last hour or so. Anyway, so today's big topic, of course, is all about kettles. And I thought that we would get into a little bit about the different kettles that are available to you to use for brewing and which one might be the way to go for you, and some things to consider while you're looking at different kettles for your own brewing at home. So I gathered a bunch that I have here lying around the roastery. Our first one is this. This is the very well-known Hario Bono. Is that right? Yeah, the Bono. And it's got this kind of beehive shape to it. And it's all stainless steel with some kind of polymer synthetic handle. Now here's the thing, this is the one that we actually used at the Hamden shop for a good 9-10 years daily, and it's in fairly good shape, right? So it's a really nice. It's a 1 liter kettle. As you can see, it's a little bit rusty now. Probably needs a good cleaning. It's been sitting around for the past year after we pulled it out of service. So it's got a little dent in it here from working in the service. It's a little bit dusty at the moment, but it has a spout. And one of the biggest things you want to consider in selecting a brew kettle is the spout. And the shape of the spout really determines how well you can control the flow of the water and the way you pour. So the different shapes will show you how well it actually flows. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you in a little bit. Also, the way that you hold the kettle, the handle, the placement of the handle, the angle of the handle is all going to have an impact onto how well the kettle is balanced in your hand. All right. By the way, if you're watching, I'm noticing on the stream feed control window here that it says that we're running off of Wi-Fi. So are you getting any slowdowns in in the feed. If there are, just let me know in the comments. I'd like to know what's going on, if there's anything we can do to fix that. All right, so then we have next is, well, let's go to the next generation. So a couple years ago, I was in Tokyo, wandering around there, and I found this, the Hario Fit Kettle. This is what we use to replace the Bono, right? We replaced it here, and this one has a very similar shape spout, right? You can see that the spout is very similar in shape. A little bit more tapered here at the tip, right? So it's a little bit elongated, a little bit narrow, and that actually kind of helps with the way that it flows. The shape of the neck is a little bit more refined, a little bit pulled. It's pulled back up here. It's pulled back compared to the Bono, right? And then the handle has more of a little place for your thumb, right? So the handle, it's actually much more ergonomic. I thought it was very comfortable kettle, and so when I saw this in the May of 2019, I really wanted to buy one in Tokyo, but unfortunately, I just didn't have this bag space. So when my brother went later in the year, at the end of the year in December, I said to him, "Hey man, I need you to pick these up for me." So he picked up a couple, and this is actually in January of 2020, right before the pandemic started. We switched out the Bonos for the Fits, and the Fits they're fantastic. I mean, they're just as good. The lid, little perf holes to let some of the steam escape, and all stainless construction with black coatings for just a little more stylishness, right? So it's black powder coated, and yeah. And so here's the interesting thing: like sometimes on these Bonos, I'll show you an example of it. To get everything. Okay, so this is where we are. We've got the Bono, right? So the Bono has been great. So when we first opened Hamden, the shop in Hamden in 2010, we had 3 of these, and until the end, until 2020, we still had 2 of them in service, right? But early on, within the first year, this kettle, this Bono, actually broke. The black plastic handle broke, and it shows that it's really just this, right? This little 2-prong piece of metal that's kind of welded or fused to the stainless. For whatever reason, this one broke, the rest never did. And I mean, like, we used it daily, 10 years, no problems. This one, less than a year, problems. And one of the things about this is that this little tab of here makes it very difficult to like, one of my baristas back then fashioned, handmade this wood replacement handle. Unfortunately, it just didn't have enough strength, but I've kept it. I mean, it's just it looks nice. It kind of has a nice look to it, but unfortunately, it just never was able to withstand the weight and the pressure, and that was a disappointment. All right, so let's moving on. Next one up that's really popular is the Bonavita kettle, and this particular one is the Bonavita. It's a Taiwanese, or I think it's Taiwanese made. Bonavita kettle, very economical. This particular one is their heater model. So I have the heater model. There's a heater that just boils the water, and then there's a heater model where you can actually set the temperature, and it will hold it at the temperature. And this This one is from the original one, just the plain boiler model, and it's got a little bit of a, it's got a little like LED, or not really LED, but this is an indicator light to let you know that it's on when it's on its base, and then it has the electrical connections here, and they're pretty well designed in that, you know, I was always kind of concerned that, okay, I'm going to put it in water, it's going to sit on a wet countertop or something, and as I put it on top of the charger, it's going to electrocute something and blow something up, but it never did. It's actually inset as a bit, as you can see here, it's inset. So there really haven't been any problems with it. Now, the Bonavita is different, of course it's different, and the way that you'll see compared to the, let's say the Hario, let's look at the way, the shape of it's higher, it's pulled back, right? The spout is higher, right? It's pulled back more, and the way that it's shaped, so for example, if you look here at the shape, the tip part of the Hario, this way, you'll see that it's a little bit kind of pointed, where this one is not as pointed, right? Let's compare the two. Right, you can see the difference, right? So the Bonavita, just by that nature, when you're actually working with it, doesn't necessarily have as fine a control of the flow of the water that compared to the Hario. And then another thing to compare, this plastic handle, so you can see this little tab here. When you put it on top of the heated source, you push this down and it turns on, and when it's finished boiling, it pops back up. But this handle, the way that the handle is, honestly, it's a little bit bulky. It's also kind of squared. It's rounded, but it's still squared, so it doesn't sit as well, and it doesn't feel as comfortable in your hands. It's a little bit harder to hold, especially as you're pouring. So it's very economical, especially when it came out. People were really excited because it was offered at a great price point, and it would heat up. And so that really gave a lot of enthusiasm for it. However, it was just not as, it just doesn't feel as good. And then one of the problems is that it's plastic, right? And it doesn't necessarily have a lot of resilience. So if you drop it, like here's the one that I have that's actually the standard version without the heating element, that just like a normal routine. Well, you drop it once and, like, you know, here, look, this whole thing, the handle in this one sheared off completely. Like, I don't even know how well that was. You can just see it wasn't necessarily very well, you know, attached to the kettle. So that was disappointing. And then the ones for the digital version aren't really much better as far as durability. Like, I dropped this one from counter height, and, you know, basically the base, this base blew off completely. The handle blew off as well. I mean, it was just disaster. Look at this disaster. And so it's damaged to the point that I just can't simply replace the handle, because it's ripped the handle, like all the anchors on the inside the handle off. The anchoring for the plate has been ripped to shreds. It's nice to see the interior, so you can kind of see the build of their technology, right? So the heating element, you can see the heating element starting here, wrapping around, right? But, you know, you would hope that, you know, if you drop it, it's going to take a little bit more of a beating. So a little bit disappointing there. Then let's see what else. What's the next one? Let's go to this one. This one is kind of a generic Chinese-made, Taiwanese-made kettle. This one I got from Espresso Parts years ago, and I think Espresso Parts. And it's just a simple kettle. Has this kind of metal handle, right? That has just two pieces. It's not terribly comfortable, but it's a small, compact, maybe 16 ounces or so of water with just a simple interior. There's a bow on here because we were using this one as a Christmas ornament one for the last few years. But this one has a little bit more of a sloper, a steeper, it swings up and then just comes. So this way you can tilt it, especially when it's full, right? So when it's full, the water line will be here, right on inside the spout, right? So when it's full, so it's just easier for better. So it's easier to control, right? Then the next one we have here is this one. This is made by a company called Kalita. However, the design comes from the spout was designed by a guy named Ichiro Sekiguchi, who's the master of Cafe de l'Ombre in Tokyo. And he went to Kalita and basically told him he wants to make this gooseneck kind of kettle. And this is a really, of all of the kettles that I have, this is the one that offers the finest control possible because of the really very, very tapered and pointy tip. So you can control very finely the pour and the flow. Now, some of the downsides of this is because it's all steel and it's enameled steel. Like this black one, the Bonavita, is a stainless steel, and I believe it's powder coated. This one is enameled, which is really pretty. However, the problem is you can see here and here on top of the lid, and I just did this. I did this morning, just a couple minutes ago. As I was carrying it over here, this fell off, hit the floor. And we have hard floors here at the roastery. So if you drop this, and you can see I dropped it here, right? Unfortunately, the enamel's not hard wearing, and when you drop it, it just breaks the enamel. It makes me very sad because I love these kettles, and to see them getting damaged, and like All right, hey everyone. I'm very sorry about that. We're Rob. How's it going, man? How's it going? If you're still there, sorry to have lost you on this. I don't know what happened. Basically, as we were talking about the Kalita, my computer just died. It just went green screen and just dead. So I don't know what's going on with that. That's very disappointing. I'm very sorry about that. There's a bit of a technical problem, and I was trying to restart it, but it won't restart. This is a pain in the butt. All right, now it's restarting. We'll see what happens. But anyway, let's continue on. While this thing is doing its thing, I still have, so I had to switch to the laptop. I had to run out to the car, get the laptop. I hope you can hear what I'm saying. And so that's it. Yeah, now we're rolling. All right, so back to the kettle. So this kettle, the Kalita, the Kalita kettle, I think is one of the greatest kettles, right? I really enjoy using this one. The computer's back. Let's see now. Let me see if I can get it back rolling. So Rob, man, how's things going out there? These are the problems we can have while live streaming in the world. Now if I can get back to StreamYard on the laptop and on the main computer. Now, okay, so I'm logged in. So I'm going to log in on the other machine and see if we can, will that displace? Am I, okay, so I am here. Oh, there we go. We're going to go to this one. Oh, look at that. We are double timing here. Excellent. All right, very good. So now let me just give me a moment to log off of the laptop. And all right, now here we are. Okay, so get out of this. So that's a great thing here. So for those of you who are interested in doing your own live streaming, this is one nice thing about StreamYard is that it's still, we dropped out completely, and I had to run out to the car. So basically the stream was just rolling dead the entire time. And man, for some, it just kept, I guess it kept broadcasting. It kept holding. So I'm gonna have to go look at the footage or look at the file after and see this for myself. But this is one of the nice things. Like if you were, like I've had this happen in YouTube Studio when you're just using the control room and it broadcasts, and once you lose your connection, well, you're kind of done. It keeps on going, but it doesn't allow you to get back in. StreamYard allows me to get back in. And anyway, so let's forget the StreamYard talk here. Let's get back to the kettle. So like I said, the Kalita kettle is really fantastic. I really like it. Like I said, it does have the problem if you drop it, the enamel cracks off, and the other problem is that the enamel cracks off in the middle and the inside. So you have to be careful and make sure it gets dried really well every time you use it. Otherwise, it may allow for rust to develop, right? Because it is steel. It's a steel kettle rather than, the other ones which are stainless. All right, the last kettle we're going to look at is what's called the Della. And this is the Della. And you've probably seen this in like, Middle Eastern style coffees, right? And so the Della is actually a completely different use than how we normally use it. But I thought that it would be interesting to talk about because of the spout that it has, this really long duckbill kind of spout. And the Della is different. And this one's a brass Della. Is that right? It's all brass. Well, it's coated stainless steel to make it look like brass. But basically, you take the Della and you put your water, your Arabic coffee, and the Arabic coffee is very lightly roasted. And I mean, not lightly roasted in the manner of hipsters and their first crack, type of roasting. We're talking like light roasting, like maybe 185 Celsius, kind of light, right? So really, really tan color, like stuff that you're just like, whoa, that's crazy. But then they'll mix a little bit of maybe some saffron, cardamom, and maybe some other spices, and which is you add it all into the della, and then you boil, and you boil, and you boil, and it comes, and then you pour into these cups, and it comes up looks very tan. Kind of like, if you're familiar with Hawaiian kava, it looks kind of like that color. But, and it's everywhere you go in the Middle East, they're serving that. But this is just another style of spout. And we'll just show that. Okay, so now let's move on forward. Let's talk about, again, if you're joining us and you're watching if you're watching us, make sure you thank you for watching us, first of all. Really appreciate you spending time with us. But if you have any questions about coffee, put them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to address and answer them. So I've got this Chemex, and we're not going to really brew any coffee. We're just going to show you the way the water flows and controllability of the water with the different kettles. So we're going to first start off with the Hario kettle. Now here at the Spro store, we actually brew all of our, we actually boil or heat our water in kettles, in big kettles. So we have kettles of this size. This is kind of been beaten up a lot. I don't know, 3 liters. And then we have 7 liters. And we boil all the water in the kettles and then utilize them that way. But those are better for just pouring. They're not really good for control because of the spouts. Okay, so we're going to have our Hario Bono. And as you can see, this slow controllability allows us to, this is real popular for V60 brewers. So you can control it pretty well. Right? Not bad, not bad. Now we'll compare that to the Fit kettle. So the Fit actually allows it, the Fit has an updated tip, so it allows a little bit finer of a pour. I'm controlling it. It's a little bit more difficult because I am holding it over my head. All right, let's now try the Bonavita. I should probably stand up a little bit more, just to mimic and simulate really what we're brewing. Now this one, as you can see, it's not as, it's got this rounder end tip of the, oh, not bad. Oh, maybe that's a little bit easier. Now we're going to go to the smaller kind of cute Taiwanese kettle. So now this has a little, you can see the spout's a little, you can see the spout is a little bit on the round side. I've got to tilt a lot to get it to come out. This one's a little bit more difficult to keep like this like right there, it's hard for me to keep a slow pour without it dripping. Again, if you have any questions about the kettles or coffee in general, just let me know. Put them in the comments below. That's a little bit harder to control. I'm not really liking that. Now I'll use the Della, the Middle Eastern style kettle. Of course, the Della is not really designed for this kind of brew pouring. It's really designed to, like I said before, to brew the coffee and then just pour it into cups. But let's just try it. It's really got this wide sloping. I don't know if you can really control it that well because you've got to overcome that hump, right? You got to overcome this hump first, and then it will drop down fast like a roller coaster. But let's see. Like I'm tilting it way over. Look at this. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, I guess you can. But I think one of the problems with this type of thing is that because you've got to overcome the hump of the spout, you really kind of have to, in order to get it, you really kind of have to lean it over more. There we go. Lean it over more. So you start to, you could more, I think you could more readily lose control. King One Kong Tooth, how are you, man? Good to see you. Welcome. How are things in the UK? Sound is very low and keeps freezing. Getting off my break now. Excellent. We'll play. Okay, good. Well, there's going to be some problem. We had some issues with the computer going down, and but the sound is very low, probably because I was standing and a little bit away from the microphone. I'll try to speak louder when I do that again. All right. So what we're doing today is we are looking at different kettles and just talking about general things that you might want to consider when you're looking for a kettle for brewing coffee. Now, for our last one, or our other one, is the Kalita Gooseneck kettle, this one. And this is actually the one we use here at the Sprostery's cafe. This one allows you to control the way that the shape of this really allows nice control. So like a lot of times we'll do a little bit of pulsing for nail drip style brewing, right? And then you can control. Is it still low, you're saying? Oh, let's see. Actually, the microphone is actually to the side of the Chemex, so I'm actually. In reality, I'm actually maybe just about 2 inches from the microphone. Does it sound better if I maybe I should just be speaking a little bit louder? Maybe I should boost the signal a little bit more. Is that a little bit better? How's it? Oh, you know what? I guess I could be. Let me see. How's okay, how's that? A little bit better? Did that turn out better? Actually, even on my end, that sounds a lot better. Okay, I just adjusted some of the internal settings. So, like, here's the thing. So, the guys that really have mastery over this one, they're really able to control the pour much better than I am. It's still very quiet. All right, let's have a look here. Maybe we can check some of the settings. On my end, the audio comes on very clearly. Oh, here we are. Oh, no wonder. How's that? Better now? I wonder what was feeding through. So I have to go into the settings of StreamYard and make sure it's selected our mixer. And I just changed it. For some reason, it's USB default. I don't know what that means. So hopefully that's better. Okay, there we go. Excellent. Glad to hear it. Good. Okay, so good. That's much better. Sorry about the problems with the. We had a lot of technical issues today. All right, so let us continue on pouring. So these are just things to consider while pouring, while thinking about kettles. And I had a whole bunch of stuff that I was, prior to the crash of the machine, I had a whole bunch of stuff that I was preparing. Oh my goodness. So what are the things you really should be considering, when you're thinking about a kettle? And I think one of the big things, of course, is to think about, should I go this way? I should go this way with it. No, let's go this way. We'll go here. All right. And one of the things I think you should think about is control over the water. And that's why the spouts, we talk about the spouts and the ergonomics of it a lot, because control is really an important part. So are you able to control the flow of the water? If you really want fine control. And here's another thing to think about is, like, as you can see, I'm holding this kettle like this now, and the water in here is warm. I could not do this when under brewing temperatures, right? Because the water would be just off the boil, about 198 degrees, and it's just too hot to hold. Like, you'd burn yourself doing this. And that's one of the things with this particular kettle, is that if you're using it for a longer period of time, now if you're in a situation where you're just boiling water, you're putting hot water in here, and then you're brewing right away, and you're just making one, let's say 12-ounce cup, that's really not going to make that much of a difference. But when you're holding water for a while and you're using it, on this particular kettle, because the enameled steel handle, this handle actually gets warm to the point where it gets pretty uncomfortable. So what I tend to do is I will take, when that starts to happen, I will take a towel, bar towel, and then I tend to hold it like that so that I can pour. Right? And that just allows a little bit better control and allows you not to burn your hand. And that's a really important thing. So King Wong Kong 2 is asking, why is that? To saturate the grounds without missing some. I'm not sure if I'm getting the connecting to where you were connecting to on that. And the cloth, yeah, the cloth definitely helps. However, on the other ones, let's say like these, the the Hario kettles, the Fit and the Bono, because of the synthetic handles, you don't really, I've never had the need to use anything but these. Actually, that's interesting too. I think that the ergonomics of the handle on this kettle kind of makes it, well, I don't know. I want to say that it's when you pour, okay, gotcha. To saturate the grounds when you're, yeah. This way it allows you to well, let's say we have a bed of coffee here, right? So it allows you to really just get around all the coffee. And then if you really want to get hard with it, you can, right? And this, oops, sorry. And this one, if you want to go hard, you can as well. So they all allow you to go heavy. And why can't you just pour in quicker? Well, you can, and that's, when it comes to pouring in quicker, then it's, if you want to pour a heavy, then maybe the selection of your kettle isn't necessarily that critical. Meaning that I can take this bigger kettle, if I'm just pouring hard, I can go straight into it heavily, right? And typically if we're like, let's say in a cupping situation where I'm want to fill the glass, the cupping cup, just fill it. We want to saturate the grinds and fill it relatively quickly because we're trying to do as many as we can in close a time as possible, then it's not so important. It's you can just hit it and go. Or let's say you're using something like a French press. Like in a French press, I won't necessarily use these kettles. I'll just tend to go straight from the boiling kettle, and just go straight into it because I don't necessarily need control under those situations. Presume some of the grounds may not get wet. I think only if it depends. Like let's say we're doing the cupping thing or in a French press. If I with either of those two, I'll pour it relatively hard to make sure that it kind of sloshes everything around so that all of the grounds do get wet. Now the difference is there, and with that style of brewing, is that I just want to get all the coffee wet and then let it settle and let it sit and soak, because it's actually soaking completely in it. Whereas during pour over brewing or pour over style brewing, of course, it's always constantly flowing through the coffee. So you want to make sure that you're getting all the grounds saturated while controlling the flow. Because let's say this is like in the Chemex, which is in very many respects is very similar to the V60 in that it's basically just one big hole, right? So with that big hole, there's not so much. There's nothing to restrict the flow other than the restriction caused by both the filter and the coffee itself, right? So we're using the coffee as a resistance to the flow of the water. And what we want to do is that we want to have, enough water, enough exposure of the water to the coffee. So we want to control. So as you're pouring and you're controlling the flow, as well as controlling the level, right? Because if you have enough resistance with the coffee, it will create enough resistance through the flow that it will float a little bit of an amount of the water to mingle with the coffee as it's flowing through. So slower the better. Yeah, yes and no. Okay, French press is okay, more for cupping. Yes. In a French press, would you ever stir with a spoon? You can. I tend not to, mainly because I think that, why don't I use stir with a spoon? Mainly because it's just something else to get dirty. So I find that, let's say, for example, I have French press, right? And I've put the coffee in the French press. I've filled it with water. Well, typically what I'll do is I'll start, so 4-minute brew time in a French press. I'll add the coffee. At 80, let's say in a typical 350 milliliter brew, I'll add 80 milliliters of water and use that, and I'll saturate the coffee with the 80 mils, right? And I'll pour it relatively hard, but not so hard. I'm not just dumping in it, but enough. I am trying to make sure it all gets covered and gets hydrated. Wait 30 seconds, let it float. And instead of using the spoon to stir it in and break it down, I just use the water flow. So I'll use the water flow as I come in with the remainder of the volume and just break through that crust and then push everything around until I get to the full volume. And why not the spoon? I mean, mainly because I don't want to wash a spoon. Really, that's it. I don't really want to wash a spoon. That's the bottom line. And plus, I think it's just much more efficient that way. Oh, stir with a spoon and then settle. Mm-hmm. So with the pour-over kettles you are using are preferable. Yes. So like when it comes to pour-over style brewing, or any kind of brewing where I need to control the flow of the water through the coffee, then that's when these kettles and their different spouts can't really come into play. Now, to be honest with you, I'm sitting here pouring with all of these today, and there's none that I hate. Well, the Bonavita maybe, because the Bonavita has the least, probably, well, now that I'm pouring with it, it's not terrible. I was going to say it has its ergonomics aren't as great. But, maybe that's just me thinking about it from before, but it's not that bad. excuse me, I don't trying to. I mean, they're not bad. They're not bad. And here's the other side of it. I don't know if they're not bad or it's just that to be honest, I do have a lot of experience now brewing coffee. So I don't know how much of that is compensating for whatever I may or may not like in the brewers. I do. I mean, I don't find any of them to be terribly. There's nothing I'm really objecting to, and it's also one of these things that maybe, in my personal philosophy as a barista, is that we can. It's really about we need to understand the basic techniques of what we're doing, so that we can brew coffee in perhaps less than optimal circumstances, and that's one thing that I think is that in practically every situation, it's not the perfect brewing condition. There's always going to be something that's going to be potentially mucking up what you're doing. So you have to be able to adjust and flow, right? Oh, I thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, David, what's going on? How are you doing, David? Any thoughts on induction burners? Thinking I'll pick up a Kalita and want more efficient heat source than my gas stove. Yes, I do. Here at the roaster, we've only used induction for the last 4 years since we opened this place. I had been using this one induction top from, I can't remember the name of it offhand, but basically that one is 1800 watts, 120 volt. It's basically the same one that you can buy at the restaurant store, probably about $150. They're pretty thick. The base-wise, and it's got this rotary control, so you can control, by digital numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you can also, alternatively, I think that one you can control by temperature. I just replaced that one with the CookTech. So since we closed Hamden, I took the induction burner from there, this CookTech, which is much more pricey, right? I think the CookTechs start at $600, but you know what? Since I've never used them together, I never really thought too much about it. But the CookTech, the latitude in the degree of heat with the numbers is much finer with the CookTech. I mean, it really makes a big difference. Well, in cooking, right? So, for example, one of the big things I have here is that I make my own rice, and I figured out on the old induction burner that my little pot of rice that I make takes 13 minutes to make, and it should be at the number 2 setting at the very most, 2, maybe 1. It's typically 1. Oh, it's actually 1. So I'll take it, put it in the pot, add the water, put it on the burner, turn it on to the first setting, and then let it run 13 minutes, and it cooks pretty good. When we switched up to the CookTech, that same setting, it's no longer 1, it now has to go to 7. So it really gives you that, and it's the same amount of cook time, but it shows me that the latitude and the degree of heat fineness is much better on the CookTech. So if you really want to hold at a low simmer, then it's worth getting into the CookTech. And if you can afford it, like I think it's $1,800. Polyscience and Breville have teamed up to make the smart, what is it called? The smart induction. I played with it at Star Chefs, and it's awesome. It's an awesome induction burner. However, $1,800 is a lot of money. Now that all said, those ones that you get for like $100 or $80, the little pancake size ones, you get them at like the Chinese, the Asian markets too. Those work perfectly fine. I have one of those as well. I have a Waring Pro one, and they're good for rough heating. So if you just want an induction to bring your coffee water to a boil, it's perfectly fine. It just depends on how much control you really want over the heat. But I think they're great. I've been using induction now at our shops and in my personal cooking world for well over 10, 12. Oh no, we've been since since we started the library location in 2006. So since 2006, I've been using induction, and I think it's worked great. Worked great. We use it, of course, for not just boiling our water for the coffee, but for making everything for like sauces, ganaches, everything we use at Spro. We've always used induction. So yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a great way to go. I do have, in addition to the induction, like here at the Spro store, we also have like portable butane gas burners, which are good for their thing. It just gives us more. It gives us more cooktops without necessarily having to burn more electricity. Yeah, so that's where we are. But anyway, so there we are. Then these are some thoughts on the kettles. I've heard people talk about using kettles guarantees you consistency. I don't know about that. I mean, the only thing that guarantees consistency in my mind is you as the coffee maker, right? If you're making coffee and you're paying attention to being consistent, then you will eventually be consistent, right? And that's another great one. David's question really brings up an important thing is, which is the heat source you should go with. If you decide that you do want to go with induction, make sure that everything is induction friendly. Like pretty much everything that I'm buying in my world has to be induction friendly. Like I have one pot here that is aluminum. This Japanese not nabe pot, but basically it's just a saucepan, and it's aluminum. But that's the only piece of equipment that I think I have now that is aluminum. Oh, there's a couple frying pans I got, but most everything. So the easiest way to test basically is if you're out looking for kettles and stuff, is use a magnet. As long as a magnet will stick, it means that it has enough ferrous material that'll work with induction. Because what induction does, it basically is a coil inside the burner that not generates heat, it actually stimulates the molecules inside the pot that heat up the pot, the metal in the pot itself, that then transfer the heat to the water or whatever medium, whatever you're cooking, right? And so the thing is that the glass top on the induction will feel warm, but it's not that warm. It's warm, but it's not going to burn you typically, because all the heat is in the metal, right? All right, and then what else do we need to consider here? I mean, some of the other ones out there to consider, there's a whole bunch of, and that's the thing, there's a whole bunch of different kettles that are available in the market. A lot of people like the Fellow Stag, which is not bad. Very much, the Stag is very much similar in design to the Hario Fit. The Bono, the V60 Bono is still this old classic is still very popular. Then there's companies like Overware, Barista. They all have different kettles, and some of the ones that are out there now have their own, like this Bonavita. They actually will have, electric heat sources, so they'll actually be self-heating, which are cool. But the thing is, I'm always a little bit. They're cool, like for individual making, like it's great, right? You put this on, you boil it, or you set the temperature on the more fancy one, and then it brings it to that temperature, and then you use it. However, you have 1 liter of water, and then once you use it, you have to heat more. So if you have to make multiple coffees, or let's say a big Chemex or larger, then you're kind of stuck, right? You brew, and then you have to wait for the thing to heat up again. But if you buy yourself like a big kettle, like a 7 liter, like this one, you have plenty of water power available to you. And that's really what I like, water power available. So if you want to just go hardcore with it like this, that's not a problem, right? All right, so I guess that's it. We're pushing on our 1 hour time. So thank you very much for tuning in. Next week, we're actually going to be talking a little bit about coffee and CBD. One of our guests at Spro Hamden was a a big, well, really, it was kind of experimenting with CBD and coffee. I don't know much about CBD well, I know a little bit about coffee, but not so much about CBD. So we're going to put them together and do a coffee tasting, as well as bring Joey onto the show and let him talk to us about why he's doing CBD with coffee, what it can do for us, and all of that. I really don't know too much about it. All I know is that supposedly it makes you feel better. So hopefully my aches and pains next week will be gone, because I'm going to be drinking this CBD coffee. But yeah, so that's it. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. If you're watching on the replay, thank you very much for watching and taking the time to watch. Those of you who are tuned in, thank you very much as well. I really appreciate you spending this time with me. We're going to be here every Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, talking coffee and, that kind of thing. So tonight we had a little bit of troubles with some of our technical issues. My apologies on that. Hopefully we'll get those sorted out. And so thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate you spending time with us. Have a great one, and see you next